Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Paramount DEI lawsuits. Paramount sued for the third time over illegal DEI policies. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. One would have to wonder, what exactly is wrong with Paramount? Why do they have to keep getting these DEI lawsuits? Disney is a much bigger company, and they do have a discrimination lawsuit. They've got a Gina Carano lawsuit. It's very prominent. People are very aware of it. But it's not like they even have as many lawsuits going as Paramount. Part of the problem with Paramount is that they have this woman, Marva Smalls. She is on the way out. They announced she's leaving the company, but she's kind of their DEI guru. They made her a vice president at Paramount. So she's been involved with diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels of Paramount, running rampant, giving people absolutely ridiculous advice about hiring, letting them know it's okay if you discriminate against people. You're not going to get in trouble because it's all in the service of DEI. Well, no, you are going to get in trouble. This is the third lawsuit they've gotten, and this is just from America First Legal. That's Stephen Miller's organization. Stephen Miller founded America First Legal as a response to the ACLU, which has gone completely woke, and it sues for conservative causes, basically just keeping the Constitution in place. Stephen Miller now has a very close relationship with the president, so there's no question that Paramount's going to be made to pay for this. But that's not all. Paramount is in the middle of trying to get a merger done. They're going to need the approval of the federal government. They're going to need the approval of the FCC. If you are concerned about market power and combining companies and how that might affect future business opportunities and hiring opportunities, why would you allow this merger to go through? Are these people responsible if they're constantly being sued for racial discrimination? I'm going to say no, they're really not responsible. I'm not saying the Paramount merger is not going to go through. I'm just saying it makes absolutely no sense for them to continue to get into these problems where they're constantly getting sued for discriminating against people when they're not going to win these lawsuits. The Supreme Court is against them. The federal government is against them. The federal government is getting a new attorney general very soon, and they're getting a new head of their civil rights division who is going to go after companies for exactly this kind of discrimination. So whatever it is the people at Paramount are focusing on, they should stop for a minute, focus on this, and get rid of these lawsuits, settle with these people, and end these discriminatory policies. And I'm not saying just because it's the right thing to do. Of course it's the right thing to do. You can't do this kind of discrimination when the environment is so clearly against it, and you're getting sued time and time again. This actually, if they wanted to make a point of it, if they wanted to make an example to other companies, this could be enough to stop their merger with the federal government saying, look, you're a discriminatory company. We want to see you go through multiple stages the way that the previous Department of Justice used their authority to force individual local police departments to follow some kind of a settlement agreement to show they weren't discriminating. That's what I would use the Attorney General's power for if it were up to me, and that may be the direction they go, because this has gone completely beyond ridiculous now. And I do blame this Marva Smalls, and here's why. Even still today on Paramount's executive team website, it says this: Marva Smalls, Executive Vice President, Global Head of Inclusion at Paramount, and Executive Vice President for Public Affairs at Nickelodeon. So she's the Global Head of Inclusion. And if you search Paramount on Google, you get this: Marva Smalls on Leading with Diversity. Marva Smalls is something of a corporate politician for diversity. Well, then it's her fault. Coming from AmericaFirstLegal.com, America First Legal sues CBS for illegal employment discrimination against decorated Navy combat veteran. I mean, could you get a worse headline, CBS? Do you really need that at Paramount? Is that what you want people to think about when they think about your company? Is that what you want the FCC and the Antitrust Division of the Justice Department looking at your merger? You want them thinking about that headline? Because Stephen Miller is going to make very sure that the people in the Antitrust Division are well aware of your history. Coming from Democracy Docket, which, believe it or not, might be Mark Elias's website. That's another whole story. But coming from Democracy Docket, Trump picks Stephen Miller as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. That's who they're playing around with now. He's in the White House. He's 6 inches away from Donald Trump. America First Legal filed a lawsuit against CBS Broadcasting and its parent company, Paramount Global, for allegedly violating California's Fair Employment and Housing Act by unlawfully discriminating against AFL's client, a decorated U.S. Navy combat veteran, because of his race, sex, and military service status. AFL's client is a white heterosexual male and veteran who served as a combat cameraman and reconnaissance expert in the U.S. Navy for more than a decade. So the guy knows how to operate a camera. There is no excuse here. The client received numerous commendations for his service, including the Joint Service Commendation Medal, the Iraq Campaign Medal, and the Meritorious Unit Commendation Medal. After retiring from the military, AFL's client began working as a videographer at CBS in 2018. In April 2023, AFL's client was told that when a video editor position opened, he would be the first on the list to be hired. And a hint to Marva Smalls and the people that are not going to hire you no matter what because of your skin color. Don't tell people they're going to get hired, at least when you're telling people to discriminate. Make sure you also tell them, like from a common sense standpoint, don't tell the white people that they're going to get hired if you know you're not going to hire them, because they might actually then sue you for that and then kind of hold you accountable in court for it. But I mean, that's like a smart thing. And I don't think these people are very smart. In June 2023, CBS began recruiting for a full-time editor, and AFL's client was not considered for the position. When he asked the hiring manager why he was excluded from consideration, he was told, quote, "We have too many straight white men in our department." CBS subsequently hired a Hispanic female with considerably less experience than AFL's client for the position. Another hint to the people that are so racially sensitive that they only want to hire certain people in certain genders or sexual preferences: don't directly tell people you're not going to be hired because of your skin color or your gender or your sexual preference. Maybe that's why Marva's not staying at the company. Because if you're going to break the law, you at least have to be sneaky about it. CBS and Paramount have repeatedly promoted diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices, including a policy of anti-male and anti-white discrimination. Further, Paramount claims to use data and scientific rigor to transform its creative ecosystem into a DEI propaganda operation. This discrimination is, of course, systemic. Here's their workforce demographics page. From Paramount, our workforce demographics. Inclusion across our workforce. Our workforce demographics show that we've made progress towards greater diversity, and we're committed to continuing the work to advance inclusion at all levels of our workforce, particularly among our senior ranks. This kind of focus on specific genders and sexual preferences and skin colors is not good in court when you're trying to defend the position that you were not discriminating against the people that you were illegally discriminating against. Part of all of this offends me because of the racism. Part of it offends me because it's just so stupidly executed that if you're going to at least do a crime, do it with a little bit of preparation and cleverness. And then another part of it bothers me from a business standpoint of like, what are you doing? You're going to ruin your business if you don't hire people that are qualified based on merit. You can't just hire just anybody based on skin color or sexual preference. It doesn't make the product better. And even when a company is doing well, there are ups and downs. Paramount has definitely had ups and downs, especially recently. And there's also massive competition. And there's also a problem keeping good talent and finding and recruiting good talent. You cannot recruit based on skin color and have a successful business in the long term. America First Legal has previously filed 2 lawsuits against CBS for alleged discrimination. Both of those I covered on this channel. They sued CBS in February of 2024 for alleged racial discrimination, and again July 2024 for allegedly terminating an Emmy Award-winning news anchor for not fitting into a favored hiring group quota, non-white, LGBT, or female. America First Legal is committed to relentlessly fighting to protect the civil rights of all Americans and demolish illegal DEI practices across corporate America. And we will go through some of this lawsuit right now. This is America First Legal against CBS Broadcasting and Paramount. This lawsuit is about defendants' discrimination against Mr. Roden based on his veteran status, race, gender, sexual orientation, age, and disability. Mr. Roden was born on May 19, 1983, and today he's 41 years old. Defendants declined to hire Mr. Roden for a full-time position because he was not a member of the defendants' preferred groups. And that's a reference to race, sexual preference, and gender. Mr. Roden is a decorated United States Navy combat veteran who served as a combat cameraman and reconnaissance expert for nearly 12 years. So any question of his qualification is completely gone. Paramount is not going to be able to use that as a legitimate defense. Roden was medically retired after being injured during combat while serving in the Iraq War. Oh, great. So he was injured during combat and you're not going to let the guy have a job. Mr. Roden suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder stemming from his time in service. Even more inexcusable to put him through this kind of aggravation that he has to sue a company just to get a job he's more than qualified for. Now, I don't know what happened at the company. Maybe he had incidents at the company. Maybe his post-traumatic stress disorder had something to do with it. It doesn't sound like it. And America First Legal has not been laughed out of any courts with any of their lawsuits, and I'm sure they did their due diligence. And I'm not a lawyer working on the case, but I'm saying you could not have a better plaintiff than this particular guy suing this particular, what looks to be, racist company. His many decorations include a Joint Service Commendation Medal, a Joint Service Achievement Medal, an Iraq Campaign Medal, a GWOT Service Medal, a Meritorious Unit Commendation Medal, and a National Defense Service Medal. But he's not a Hispanic female. He doesn't have a medal for that. After Mr. Roden was injured in combat, he worked for CBS Broadcasting for over a year, receiving accolades and praise for his hard work and talent. Despite his exceptional work performance and his excellent relationships with his co-workers, he was passed up for a position because he's an older, disabled combat veteran, heterosexual white male. And this was a violation of Mr. Roden's civil rights under California law. Mr. Roden began working as an intern for CBS in 2018. He worked hard and diligently and was appreciated by Otto Peterson, CBS's then hiring manager, who is an actual person and will be called to testify. Mr. Roden dedicated himself to furthering his career at CBS. As a young father and transitioning out of his time serving in the military, Mr. Roden was all the more motivated to establish himself. But in 2019, the unspeakable occurred. His 3-year-old daughter, Vitalia, was kidnapped. Okay, this is insane. I have not heard this part before. Despite doing all he could to find her, federal and state law enforcement were unable to locate her. She remains missing to this day? Okay, yeah, his daughter was kidnapped in 2019, and his daughter is still missing. Over the next couple of years, haunted by this nightmare daily, Mr. Roden continued his efforts to find Vitalia. Meanwhile, Mr. Roden continued his work at CBS. Through all of this adversity, Mr. Roden persevered, demonstrating his excellence for the company. In March 2022, Peterson hired Mr. Roden as a video editor contractor. He valued Mr. Roden's hard work and exceptional performance. His military experience as a combat cameraman was clear to see. Mr. Roden was recognized at CBS for performing at the highest levels. Though Mr. Roden was not classified as a full-time staff member and did not receive benefits, he worked 5 days a week for 40 hours per week. He worked diligently, pouring himself into his work. He was often alone in the office, working long hours to ensure everything was perfect for the launch of CBS's new campaign. Mr. Roden loved his job, and Peterson continued to praise Mr. Roden's performance. In August of 2022, Peterson went on medical leave. CBS hired Eric Candiani as his replacement. Like Peterson, Candiani appreciated Mr. Roden's efforts. He requested that Mr. Roden use his personal equipment to create promotional videos, indicating that Mr. Roden's continued efforts and cooperation would lead to a full-time video editor position. When you are a freelance employee and you are using your own personal equipment, that's kind of a normal thing. It just shows additional dedication, and actually it helps to rationalize his independent status. When you're an independent contractor, you are supposed to provide your own equipment. Mr. Roden agreed, excited about the prospect of working for CBS officially as a full-time employee. With the new arrangement, Mr. Roden's job responsibilities substantially increased. He now worked even longer hours and spearheaded the filming, lighting, and shooting of promotional videos. This means they saw value in what he was doing. This continued for months, and Candiani on a weekly basis promised Mr. Roden that his efforts would lead to a full-time position. In October of 2022, A thought occurred to Mr. Roden. Perhaps CBS would get his daughter's story more publicity, which would help find her. Mr. Roden brought the idea to CBS news anchor Pat Harvey. She was receptive and said she could likely get the story on the air. But when Mr. Roden discussed the idea with his new boss, he was told that the story was not newsworthy because his daughter is white. Paramount, are you absolutely kidding me? You won't give the guy a full-time job, and that's one thing. But you're not going to help him find his missing 3-year-old daughter because she's white? It's not newsworthy? At least if you're going to do this kind of thing, you've got to all kind of be in on we're going to do this, but we're not going to openly admit it. I don't know. These are allegations. If these are true, and I'm kind of sure that they're true, but if these are true, this is beyond explanation. On top of all this guy is a veteran, and his skill set was established while he was working for the military and got commendations for his work, which he would be continuing to have done if he hadn't got injured while serving his country. I mean, Paramount, it doesn't get much worse than this. In January of 2023, after the campaign launch, Mr. Roden was told he would need to reach 1 year of work with CBS before a full-time role would be possible. Although disappointed, Mr. Roden continued his efforts, unceasingly committing himself to the company. In March of that year, Mr. Roden requested a meeting with his boss to discuss the full-time position. He again reassured him that it was in the works. In April 2023, during an all-hands call would be everyone involved at the company, like a group meeting. Joel Villeneuve, then general manager at CBS, publicly recognized Mr. Roden for his exceptional efforts and top performance. After the call, Mr. Rhodes met again with his boss. He told Mr. Roden that the decision was now in Villeneuve's hands. When Mr. Roden spoke with Villeneuve, he praised his work again, but redirected him back to his boss. His boss said the position was unavailable due to an editor being on medical leave. Frustrated, Mr. Roden persisted. He reasonably believed, based on his boss's promises, that when the full-time video editor position opened, he would be first on the list to be hired. In June of 2023, CBS began recruiting for the full-time editor position. Mr. Roden formally applied for the position. He was not considered. Dismayed, Mr. Roden scheduled another meeting with his boss. Mr. Roden inquired about why he was overlooked. His boss said, quote, "We have too many straight white men in our department, and that a minority female hire was needed to balance things out." This struck Mr. Roden to his core. He was being discriminated against because of his immutable characteristics. And you know something? This has happened in American society before, but we've gotten over this. We're not evening any scales for things that may have happened decades ago. We're in reality, and we're here now. And it was by the efforts of a lot of people putting themselves in difficult positions and forcing a lot of change in the United States so that this wouldn't keep happening. We're not going to keep doing this anymore. The country has long since decided this, and we have a new federal government in place to deal with issues like this. Ultimately, the position for the full-time editor was filled by Guadalupe Hernandez, a Hispanic female with less experience than Mr. Roden. And the reason it matters that she had less experience was that was his job to have. He put the time in, he has the experience, it should have been offered to him. Mr. Roden's co-workers approached him, consoling him, and expressed regret that CBS overlooked him because Mr. Roden was not a member of CBS's preferred groups. After Hernandez was hired for the position, Mr. Rhodes' hours were substantially diminished. Ultimately, after these repeated unfulfilled promises, Mr. Rhodes was forced to seek full-time employment elsewhere for lower pay. So he invested himself with this company, and the company treated him this way. Mr. Roden was left depressed and deeply disturbed by the events during his tenure at CBS. The situation severely aggravated his depression and PTSD. CBS had disparaged his kidnapped daughter, Vitalia, on account of her skin color and had expressly declined to offer him a full-time position because he's male, white, heterosexual, older, and a disabled combat veteran. CBS and Mr. Roden's managers showed a reckless disregard for his mental well-being, including his PTSD, and acted with animus towards him as a disabled combat veteran. Defendant's action caused Mr. Roden a great deal of emotional distress. And this is where the diversity, equity, and inclusion crimes ultimately lead. A complete and total disrespect for people who do their job, have actually served their country, He had the additional tragedy of his daughter being kidnapped. He still did his work. He was also told his daughter being kidnapped wasn't a legitimate story because of her skin color. It doesn't get much worse than this. But if you follow my channel, you know that I do hopeful stories, essentially, where we see woke situations getting shut down. We see DEI getting eliminated. That's always been my focus, to go towards what is actually working here. And when we get wins, let's talk about the wins. The lawsuit itself is a win. Knowing this guy's story is a win. The story of his daughter is a win. He's going to win this lawsuit. And because he wins this lawsuit, it will send a message to the rest of Hollywood to cut out this illegal DEI nonsense. And I hope he gets a lot more than a job. I hope the people responsible for this, the people involved with this, also lose their jobs. Paramount and CBS clearly do not deserve to have more market power through a merger. If they're going to treat people this way, this is inhuman. And when I started this story, I thought it was just another lawsuit because they didn't mention anything about the guy's daughter until I got actually into the legal filing for the complaint. This is one of the worst stories of discrimination I can remember that I've covered, and I've covered many of them. Because this kind of behavior is completely unacceptable. At the first time this happens, and maybe people don't understand, well, he is a disabled veteran, or his daughter was kidnapped, or he's actually really, really qualified. We can't just hire someone off the street because of skin color or gender. At the first acknowledgement of that and understanding, okay, yeah, we're trying to push this diversity stuff, but you know what? This is really very, very wrong in this case. Let's just give this one guy this job. For the fact that Paramount is not in a position to even recognize when the diversity stuff is going way, way, way too far, that's when things really have to change. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you. And if you want to support the channel and help me make even more videos, click on the join button to become a member of the channel.